Welcome to the College Knowledge Podcast, sponsored by the College Planning Network and Paradigm Financial Group. Whether you're searching for that right fit college, applying to college, or figuring out how you're going to afford it all, you're in the right place. You'll hear from deans, admissions counselors, student athletes, and scholars from esteemed universities and colleges around the country. We'll dig deep to uncover their insights and unique experiences. So whether you're a student gearing up for college or a parent with college-bound kids, sit back, relax, and listen. Like you, we have lots of questions. Our guests have the answers, and we're excited to share them with you. Let's get started.
Hey, everybody. Welcome back to College Knowledge. I'm your host, Dave Kozak, alongside my co-host, Mr. Joe Kerins. Today, we're gonna kind of peel back the veil on the entirety of the college planning process, when to start, how to do it, how to go through it, the good, the bad, the ugly, who's got good information, how to kind of approach it, whether you're using, a company that has all of it, or you're piecing it together yourself. Really just how to go about this process, and more geared towards parents. Like, where should their mindset be? Where should their head be? So, as a kind of expert in the college field, well, both of us have spent an incredible amount of time deep into college admissions planning, college financial planning, the outcomes and reality of what happens if it's done right, what happens if it's done wrong, how different people have approached it, what the school districts are putting out, what the private schools are putting out, what the colleges are putting out. And I think there's so much noise, Joe, that, that procrastination kicks in because, well, what do you believe, right? What's the right way to go about this? So I think this is our public service announcement as to how to actually go about planning for and gaining admission and getting through the college game. So in your opinion, Joe, where's the start? And what have you heard about the start? Because I know we've had clients walk in the door and, we're a little early, our child's a junior, so we're just starting the college thing, right? So
I think a lot of it, it depends on the child, but there are different opinions, from a financial side. When do you start? Which obviously with some of the rising costs in school, the earlier, always the better. But I think when you start to talk about finding the best fit school, when you start about building a school list, I think that's where a lot of families want to start with. I would probably say it's, freshman, sophomore year.
So let's dig into that a little bit, because I don't necessarily agree that building a school list is where you start, right?
Yeah, I mean, it doesn't always have to be there. I guess when you're asking me, like, how do you start? There's so many different areas. I guess the real question would be, well, what do you mean, Dave? Like, are you talking about when do you start planning for paying that bill? When do you start prepping for an SAT? When do you start building the school list? Do you start thinking about major career path in mind? I mean, I think it's, differences on, like, each one of those probably has a different start date.
Yeah. And I'm looking at it from the standpoint of if a student and parent were to jump into this, do they have different responsibilities, similar responsibilities? When do they start? What conversations are most important to have? And to me, there's school list is important, but can you really build a school list until you've gone and seen a school?
True.
Can you really build a school list until you have an idea of direction that you want to go? And on the parent side, right, I think we're so obsessed with pedigree right now that it is a huge distraction.
Yeah.
And, we've helped, 10,000 families over the course of the last 15 years. And probably more than that. But parents are oddly the pressure cooker in the situation. And the student doesn't get the right support. And, I don't want to add more pressure to the scenario, but, like, to me, it's starting with some open conversations and, You made a point earlier as we were prepping for this. You're talking about the presentation you saw last night, which we'll get into in a minute because I think it's a phenomenal subject matter. But the one comment you made is like, does the student like to engage in class, raise their hand, and be able to voice an opinion or answer a question or just talk? And some schools, you can't do that.
Right.
Some classes are not an option.
Yep.
And if you have a student who learns by engaging in subject matter and solid debate and conversation, and they go to a seminar-based school where you're in a room with 125 people and you get 45 minutes of lecture, then you get an assignment, and then you get to read 150 pages before the next class. Like, is that the right fit?
Yeah.
So, and we talk about in our business, right? We start them with a strong interest inventory to try and understand, hey, what are your likes and dislikes? How do you operate and all that? So, and why don't we dovetail this right into the presentation you saw last night? Like, and that's coming from someone who's been in the college admissions arena for a long time and in very high positions, right?
Yeah. And there were so many different things that were great, just golden nugget key takeaways. One of the first ones though, and why I kind of bring up like that freshman, sophomore year is it's a long process. Like, it's not something that if you just start the first time you've ever visited a school or even had a discussion on college, junior year is too late.
Yeah.
But some of the key takeaways that, things that stuck out to me that I didn't always understand, because I went to private schools, when I grew up. And this is one of those things that I think my kids are going to the public school system. They know where they're going to go to elementary school. They know where they're going to go to, they know where they're going to high school. This is the first time in their life that they have to choose a school.
Yeah.
And it's not for everybody. Obviously, if you go to a private school, you have that, but it's something that doesn't exist at all in somebody's lifetime, let alone like a parent. When you're a parent, your lifetime as a parent, it's something that hasn't existed. So there has to be some work and some effort put in, because nobody else is going to make this decision for you. And the other piece,
let me comment to that before you go on the other piece. That is such a huge point that you've never done this, right? You in a lot of instances, even in the rare instance where you go to private school, how many private schools did you really shop before you went to that school? First of all, you got to get the child there. So location is a thing. It's not like you can go to a private school unless you're going to a boarding school across the country, right? The private school is going to be within a certain radius. College is a different ballgame, right? You're living there, you're doing it. So and in shopping something like that time and effort, you've got to put it in.
Yeah.
Or you end up at a misfit school.
Yeah.
Or on, 20% of the people I'm sure don't care, end up where they end up, and it's not a big deal. But man, it's an awful lot of money and an awful lot of time. And also the pre-adult launch, we'd like it to go pretty well.
Yeah. And, I always, when in hearing you say that, it equates back to like, think about as a parent, what it was like when the first time you bought a house. Well, you probably, number one, didn't do it all on your own. Maybe you did. You got somebody to help you. You got somebody to help find, here's what I'm looking for. Oh, here are some houses that are in the area with the number of bed. Somebody else helped you, but you put in an effort to figure out what it is that you want.
100%.
Where do you want to be?
You thought about it.
Yeah. And then
what's the price range? What can we afford?
Correct.
What's a mortgage look like?
And then you get there and you say, okay, well, I'm here. This looks like but I'm going to have a lot of follow-up questions, right? Yeah. What's the heat in the house? So, hey, what's do I live on a floodplain? Like,
how old's the roof?
Yeah. You start asking a lot more questions to see if it truly is a good fit. I equate that to trying to find colleges. Number one, because they end up costing around the same amount of money nowadays.
Yeah, no doubt.
But you have to put that level of effort in. And sometimes it's the amount of effort that needs to be put in. You need somebody else to help you with it, right? Like
I can equate it right back to, so I've been working out for a year and a half now, trying to get, stay ahead of my kids. I got 4 children, and I had a gym in my house. It's beautiful. I never stepped foot in it, right? Never stepped foot in it. You know why? Because I'd go bench press, or I'd do, and then I'd do a set half-hearted, and all right. And I'd get on the treadmill and never had a plan, a program, something to follow, someone to hold me accountable, someone to tell me, hey, don't do that exercise because the rest of your muscles aren't ready for that exercise. You're just going to hurt yourself.
Yeah.
Well, now a year and a half in, okay, we worked on all of the little muscles first, then all the, and so I'd have never known to do that. And so I feel like people are coming in with the deck stacked against them because they've not done it. And they certainly, even if they did it themselves when they were in college, the landscape is shifted. It's like tectonic shifts in the landscape of college planning, right? Or of college admission. So I think it's very important to realize that the investment in time and following a proven path and a system or a thought pattern or something is absolutely necessary. And circling right back to the biggest issue we talk about day in and day out, Joe, is the procrastination of this whole thing. And you can't do it right when you're rushing. You can't. Right? It's like you needed to buy a house and you just went and said, all right, whatever house has 4 bedrooms, this, and you end up with a house that is, in a flood zone. It's not in a school district you like. You didn't think about what it was going to do to your kids. You didn't think about, the distance you traveled to work. You didn't think about, is it near the highway? Does it take me 20 minutes to get to the expressway to get to my office? Right? That you don't do that. College is much the same. Yeah.
And another golden nugget takeaway with that is, he mentions, how schools are totally different. He said like, okay, hey, there's people in Pennsylvania that may look at UCLA and USC. Okay, they're big private schools, California. They couldn't be further different, total opposites of each other. And he said, I can't tell you how many kids apply to Temple, Penn State, Pitt. And he's like, why? Because they are so different from one another. The area, the learning environment. Polar opposites. The only thing they have in common is that they're state affiliated schools. So obviously, these are not the same types of schools. So why are they on everybody's list?
And let's talk about why, in my opinion, is sticker price is the same. So, hey, if we get into one of these 3, they're interchangeable. Holy Hannah, they are not interchangeable. There are strengths and weaknesses at each school. There are size and scale at each school. There are city locations versus rural settings versus college towns versus football towns. They're insanely different environments for a student to go to. But in PA, you're right. Everybody just interchanges.
And, and he really got into a line that I loved, build your list on fit, not fame. And you have to, and fit means very different things. But he went into making sure that the school was a social fit, an academic fit, a financial fit, and from the social side of things, I again heard it and I was like, my God, that's what we want for kids, is that you have to start visiting schools. And this is why I say freshman, sophomore year, that you visit a campus and you just see if it's an environment that you would feel comfortable with. Because if it's not, if you go to a Temple and you're in the city and you've never been in the city in your life, it may be awful. But now imagine you go to Temple and you wake up every day and you wake up and you look out and you're in the city and you're kind of in a bad mood. Like, well, that's going to equate to how you go to the classroom, right? He was saying if you wake up and you're in, the absolute perfect scenario, you love the buildings, you love the environment, and you wake up every day in a good mood. Well, guess what happens when you're in a good mood and you go to class? You retain information better. Guess what happens when you retain information better? You get better grades. Guess what happens when you have better grades? More internship opportunities. More internship opportunities leads to, hey, potential jobs, which isn't that the reason that we want to go to school? Or we want to get our kids off on the right career path. So visiting schools earlier and just getting a baseline. We're blessed in the Philadelphia area of how we are I think the number one, the amount of schools in a small
density of schools.
Yeah, it is tremendous that you can, in a 20-minute drive, I think you can circle Villanova, St. Joe's, Cabrini, Eastern,
LaSalle, Drexel.
Temple. University of Pennsylvania.
Yep.
You can, in our area, you're in the area, take them. See what those schools are like. See if what you think is a good fit, from just the general, this is a college campus. What do you like about it? Right. And do that freshman, sophomore year, because you start to find things that you don't want, which is almost as important.
Yeah,
if not more.
Yeah, agreed.
You know?
So it's interesting. You say fit, not fame. And I think that we have messed that up.
Oh, without a doubt.
Big time in society today. Everybody wants the Mercedes or they want the big house. They want to, keeping up with the Joneses mentality. I see my friends on Facebook, they're taking these wild vacations. We should do that. And it has a catastrophic effect. And I think the story you told me that really stuck out was if the guy was from Princeton and he walked in and said, all you have to do is apply and you're all in, how many of you would go? And basically everybody said, yeah, we'd go. Because the U.S. News and World Report ranks Princeton as the number one school in the country. Well, poo-poo to that report, first of all, from my perspective, because I don't think you can validate a number one versus a number 20 on that list. I do not think you could take. I don't care. Tell me what you're measuring. Are you measuring gross earnings post college based on that list? Absolutely not. You're not, right? So the fact that people chase the fame of school at the detriment of the education of their child and the fit socially, economically, financially, and interpersonally, like missing the boat on it.
Yeah.
And, we give advice constantly, like stop, cast a wide net, go check it out, see a lot of schools, enjoy the environment, enjoy the journey of looking at schools. And you may not be picky the first day. You may not be picky the 100th day. But after you get to the 15th school, you're going to start saying, well, they didn't have that. Well, they didn't have that. And then all of a sudden your exposure to the environments gives you cause to think about the environments, then gives you, I like, dislike, this is what I want. And you start to narrow it. But if you don't go experience, you're missing out.
Yeah. And I think part of the fit versus fame lies on the parents. Not always the students,
100%.
And it's a little scary, right? But again, it's okay. You go to the big name school, but it's the worst fit. Okay, how long are your kids going to be there, right? I can almost guarantee that if that was real world, half those kids are transferring out first semester, first year, because they're going to realize this is not for me. I don't want to be here. So there was, the idea of don't focus on that, but start to find, well, number one, you also have to know what you're going to be looking for.
Yeah.
And I think that's where you start having conversations where guidance counselors can be helpful, right? Where you have to know what you want, right? And if you start the conversation junior year on what you want, there's not enough time. There's just not not enough time to get there.
I also think there's a maturity factor that has to be brought into the conversation about college that isn't necessarily taught in school. Meaning, a 15-year-old child being asked what they want in a school could be very different from what they actually want in a school just based on the immaturity of it. I'll use my own story as I think the best example that I could imagine. My brother went to Penn State. All of my cousins went to Penn State. My best friends went to Penn State. And had I gone to Penn State, Joe, I'd probably still be in college. It is too big and too much fun. And I'm distractible that way. I like to have fun. I like to enjoy things. And so would I have gone to class when I had to get on a bus, drive across the campus and get out, or had to walk 20 minutes to get to the building? No, is the answer. Right. So I ended up at Franklin and Marshall, an excellent school. Right. Academically, I was a fit. I could go to a lot of places, but F&M's 2,000 people. I lived on campus. If I didn't live on campus, my junior and senior year, I lived off campus. It was 2 blocks off of the the city block campus. I played baseball. I was in a fraternity. I was tied into the system. I don't know that I would have done that differently. And I got to F&M by happenstance, not because it was like my first choice. My first choice, I was trying to play baseball, and I had some scholarship opportunities lined up at some big D1 schools, bigger. They were middle schools. Villanova was one of them, but and it didn't pan out. And F&M happened to be the best school I got into at the time, not waitlisted. And at that point, this is the other part that I think you need to take notice of. I was done. I was done with the conversation. I was done with trying to figure out was I getting the scholarship? Was I on the team? Was it nope? Done. Okay, I'm not. it's not there. The scholarship didn't work out, whatever. All right, F&M, I'm done. Made my decision. I'm good to go. I don't have to worry about it anymore. And I think there's a big part of this that parents don't necessarily pay attention to, which is at some point or another in this conversation, your child is going to be done with the conversation, especially if you put them in a pressure cooker. You start hard, heavy, their junior year of high school, and you just pound college in, and like they're just not going to want to talk about it.
Yeah. And I think part of that, what comes from parents too, is there's always chatter.
Oh,
that's out
the
there.
noise is immense.
And, you kind of, you go to work, or you have this somebody that you talk to recently, and you're like, hey, how are you making out with that college search? Where are you at? And it's like, oh, she's thinking about going to some schools. Like, well, when my daughter was her age, she was already accepted to 6 schools. And you're like, my daughter's a junior. Like, yeah. Like, and then you go home thinking, oh my God, I'm so far behind. Like, there's a lot of just crap that's out there that you have to shift through to understand what's real and what's not. And that kind of led me back to part of why I wanted to talk today on. I saw a great presentation last night, but they're not always. Well, there's a lot of people out there that kind of get fed information that is not necessarily the best. And again, how do you know what's right or what's wrong?
Yeah, I mean, let's start with the financial aid nights, right? I've attended a dozen financial aid nights at local high schools, and every time I leave, being an expert in this field, every time I leave, I'm like, oh, that's what you're telling people? Like, oh my God, man.
If you can't see Dave's face right now,
well, you can
not
see,
a good
you
one.
can see it on the camera
if you're listening to us.
But it's one of those scenarios where they don't take it seriously enough. And by virtue of attending the financial aid night, they're checking the box that they attended the financial aid night, not knowing that the information they're being fed is at best bias, and at the worst wrong, right? Just straight up wrong. And we're sitting here talking and preaching and discussing how early to start, how involved you should be, the time you should take in this decision, the research you should do, the effort you should put in, right? And they're basically saying, oh, just all you got to do is fill out this form and we'll walk you through this form. And here it is. If you choose the wrong school, you fill out the form, you're going to pay through the nose for college. And we know the debt crisis exists in college, and it's not just student loan debt, because they can only borrow $27,000 themselves. The rest of the debt is on the parents, co-signed by the students and everything else. So, watching presentations, hearing the chatter. I mean, I don't know how many clients I've sat down with in the last 5 years that have said, well, I was talking to my coworker and he said this and this and their child, but I'm going, well, okay. Have you guys compared your finances? Like, have you compared your child's transcripts and academic performance and the level of school or the level of coursework they did and the grades they got on the AP exams, or the way they matriculated up through the difficulties of the core curriculum and all that? Like, no, you haven't. And so you're using advice, or you're taking advice from an entirely different, like, that's like going to buy a Mercedes and using the window sticker of the Lexus.
Yeah.
Like, well, I want this, and we don't do that, sir. That's not what you're wrong car company, wrong manufacturer, right? Like, and I think the stress that let's also talk about something candidly, right? People aren't really into stress. They're not really into pressure situations. They're not really into making decisions. Decisions cause a lot of people a lot of anxiety in this day and age. I don't understand why, right? I think we over analyze, and we're analysis paralysis. So we're over analytical and underproductive in a lot of instances. And I think this is one of those where if you find something that sounds right or sounds like it makes sense to you, then you latch onto that, and that's what you go with. And so if you check the box of the financial aid night and you talk to the Kukuman or the whatever the SAT prep is, and you check the box of getting them SAT help, and then and you've visited a couple of schools, and the English class is going to write the essay, and it's all done. We're good. We got it all handled. And I take a little bit more pride in a $300,000 decision, right? Or a little bit more time to make that $300,000 decision.
And again, you add the stress level because again, there is so much chatter, and it goes back to a conversation I had with a family member about a little bit over a year ago, where they had friends that came to me and asked me some questions, and I told them honestly, I said, you guys need to work on this. Never heard from them again. And then, come to find out, goes to college, and they were very happy. They received a very sizable scholarship. And I said, what school? And they told me, I won't mention it here. And they said, what school? I said, I bet they got $26,000 scholarship. They said, yeah, how did you know that? I said, because everybody gets it. Like, it's not, but if you don't know how the system works, you're here, oh my God, well, so-and-so got a $26,000 scholarship to go to school. Or I can't tell you how many times I've heard people, so daughter got a free ride, nephew got a free ride. I'm like, what's a free ride?
Yeah.
Because, okay, what? They covered half a tuition? Is that or you don't pay $1 for college? Because guess what? Those are very few and far between. And I've heard so many people that have heard that someone else got a free ride. Okay, well, you might say you got a $30,000 scholarship and tout your daughter, your son. Oh, my son got a free ride somewhere. And now you're thinking, oh my God, like everybody I talk to has got a free ride for college. We don't have to pay for it. We'll plan on doing the same thing they did. We'll get all the, and then you find out that's not the case. So, I mean, there's so much there's so much, I'll say, misinformation that gets passed around just by word of mouth, just chatter around the water cooler, at work, or,
sidelines
I heard
of the soccer
this whisper
game
down the lane. And that's what it is. It's one person's, I got a 30,000. And then they tell that story to somebody else. And, it was a 45,000. And then the next person, they got a full ride. And now all of a sudden you're hearing, and it's just not true. You don't know. You have to really understand your situation, understand what it's going to look like for you. You can't go off of what somebody else just
because going
says.
Right back to that fame versus fit.
Yeah.
Right. What does every parent want to be able to tell every other parent they talk to?
They want the magnet on the back of the car. They want the flag out in the front.
They want to tell them, my kid got a full ride. right.
Yeah.
In reality, and 10,000 is an underestimate of the families we've helped in the last 15 years in this. But I have not seen a full scholarship. Now, I've seen like 90%, and all they had to pay for was the meal plan, or so a great scholarships. But the full ride is a very, very limited, and usually it's of a candidacy of 20 people apply for a particular scholarship. There's 20 that are qualified to get the scholarship. It is one full ride scholarship to basically the 15 valedictorians from the high schools that are going to that one institution, compete for that one full scholarship.
Yeah.
And even then it doesn't always cover room and board. It's a full tuition scholarship.
Yeah.
And so when you look at, we can just use a Pennsylvania State school as an example. The sticker price is $26,000 to $30,000. The tuition's $12,000 to $14,000. So what's the other $12,000 to $14,000? That's room and board
and fees.
And fees. Well, yeah, we'll leave fees out of it.
But kind of coming back to the stress side and understanding a couple other things, that there's definitely different roles that parents and students are going to have.
Oh, without question.
And it's different levels of stress. I thank God that I didn't have to go through high school with social media. And, when you add what these kids are saying, I got accepted here, I got accepted here. And, hey, where are you going to college? Where are you applying? Like
the pictures with the sweatshirt on.
It's a lot to deal with. But, one of the big pieces, again, another great takeaway last night was, who drives the bus? Who drives the college bus? Is it the parents or the students? And if you're thinking it's the parents, you're wrong. It's the students are driving the bus. The parents are passengers on that bus, right? The parents have their role. They have to help. That when you visit a college campus, you have to be taking notes, right? You have to have your own takeaways, because you're going to see things differently than your child does. But the parent should not be the one that when they go on a visit is the person that's asking all the questions. right? It should be the student that's asking the questions. It shouldn't be the parent that necessarily has you're visiting this school, this school, this school. It should be the parent, or it should be the student that, but the parents need to, hey guys, you need to give me that list of schools that we're going to visit. Like you have to be assistant, kind of like, hey, this is what we want to do, but you got to create the map of where we're going. Right.
Yeah. And I'll go even down that rabbit hole further because, guess what, parents? Your student doesn't know what to ask.
Right.
They don't know what they care about yet. They don't know what questions you do in that environment. And a lot of them don't have the confidence to ask the question.
Mm-hmm.
So let's talk about a parent's role in the pre-visitation.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. You should be helping to educate your child on the things they care about, helping to extract from them the points that matter to them so that they're confident in the questions that they ask at their schools. I'll use we have a meeting in our office. And I come into the meeting and 5 other people come into the meeting. Am I writing notes? No. Someone else in the meeting is writing notes. Someone's assigned that role of like taking the notes and the what needs to be delegated and sent out at those times. But is that person doing the talking? No, that's my role in this meeting. Right. And who's the one sending the emails after the meeting or whatever it may be? Different roles for different people. And that supportive role is necessary. And I'll also go to, training. Joe, we've done an incredible amount of training, right? Sales reps, customer service reps, college advisors, college funding advisors, college admissions advisors, trained all kinds. And when we bring them in, they don't know. They just don't know the job, the role, what they have to do.
Yeah.
We train them on that. So if we're going to train adults that arguably should have logic and reason capability and all that, right?
Yeah.
Why would we not train the underdeveloped mind of an adolescent teenager in what types of things they need to be thinking about?
Yeah.
Right?
And part of that training leads to them taking more control, because again, if you kind of start, it may take a while. Like, yeah, you don't train once and it's done.
Correct.
And that's, again, gets into the plan earlier, because guys, if you do all the work, if you do everything, and then they choose a school that might not even be the best fit because you're the one that basically chose it for them, well, you're not on campus with them. You're not there to answer questions.
Nor will they give you any information. Not the student, the school. The school will not talk to you, parents.
Yeah. So it like you have to get your child ready for that. You have to do some training. And that's where, again, letting them drive the bus with you to teach them on what's important. And hey, ignore this, pay attention to that. This is where you ask for help. If you don't know how to do this, you have to get, but eventually they have to get that on their own, because the whole point is to leap off and not come back and live, with you guys, like not transfer schools. Like it's not change your major. You have to give them the ability to be themselves and basically be responsible for themselves.
Let's talk about teaching a kid how to drive. Did you just hand him the keys to the car and let him drive away?
Right.
No, you held onto the handles and the OS bar up top, and you told them when to brake and you slowed them down and you told them when to turn the turn signal and you showed them all of the things before they went for the test to get licensed to take your car and the liability that comes with driving a car.
And then you're definitely sweating the first time that they're in the car by themselves.
Yeah. Right.
It's just like, hey, you drop them off, they're done. But if you did the work and you're there with them.
How many parents decided that they were going to get a second steering wheel put in and an emergency brake when they did it, right?
Yeah.
Nobody does that.
Right.
But you may send them to the driving school, and guess what the driving school has? The second steering wheel and the brake and so, and we are certainly in a time of the helicopter parent, right? That's a real thing. And if you're wondering if you're a helicopter parent, you probably are.
Yeah.
Right. And there was I passed my wife a really cool article, and I forget the lady's name who wrote it, but one daughter is an MD, a very successful doctor. The 2 others are CEOs of legitimate companies. Only 3 kids she has, very successful. And what she was professing to create successful children was to never do something for them that they can do themselves. And if you think about that, it's not that, you don't do things for them when they don't know how to do it. It's that you're teaching them how to do things for themselves every step along the way rather than doing it. Right? When a lot of parents, they dress their kids until they're 7. I can tell you right now, a 2.5-year-old can pull their own clothes on. It takes a little bit of work to teach them how to do it. It takes a little bit. The socks may come on wonky and sideways, and it may be twisted and messed up and rolled around, but they can do it. So if you continue to do that, you're going to make it harder on yourself at the other side. Yeah,
I'm going through learning to tie shoes right now.
Oh, buddy. Buddy.
But hey, it's like, I don't just say, hey, tie your shoes, right? Like, well, I got to show them how to do it.
Yep.
But I also, can't just constantly do it for them.
And also leave 10 extra minutes before you need to leave the house so that they can take the time to tie the shoe.
I'll be happy with 10.
Well, I'm just saying, a lot of parents are like, tie your shoe, we got to go now. And you're like, that's not the time. That's not you yet. Tie that shoe and you go.
Right.
But if you're thinking about it, leave 15 minutes and say, hey, you need to get your shoes on and get them tied. We got some time.
Yeah. So a couple other big things that can
we just circle back to the noise thing for a minute?
Oh, yeah, sure.
I want to want to summarize the noise. Ultimately, everybody has an opinion. And if you know anything about opinions, right, they're not valid or real to you. And I talk about distillation all the time of information. Distill the information that comes at you. Think about it critically before you just put it in your pocket as gospel, right? Your coworker, the person, your boss, the person that works for you, your neighbor, the kids on your kids' soccer team or football team or lacrosse team or softball team, right? Those are all moments of input that need to be distilled and thought about as to whether they're valid or invalid. And I can tell you that in the college admissions and financial space, that it's probably invalid more often than it is valid, for the simple fact that no two families are identical. No two academic performances are identical. No two social styles are completely identical, and nor are the financial situations for anybody. And so you cannot assume that just because it worked this way for one family, it's going to work that way for this family, right?
Yeah. Yes, absolutely. I mean, nail on the head there. Like that is it. And so it has to be individualized. It has to be.
And let me extend it to the experts or the professionals that are here to help, not us. We're different and we're unique in an entirely different way because we bring it all together and we tell it how it is. In high school, you'll have a counselor. In a private high school, you have a counselor to far less children. The counselor in the public environment self-admittedly does not have the time to do what is necessary in this process. I've talked to hundreds of them. I consult an entire organization of guidance counselors. They don't have the time. They have to deal with mental health. They have to deal with everything else inside the school, behavioral issues, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And their job is to be the conduit of information from the high school necessary to get you to college, not to pick the college for you. Meaning they need to get your transcripts. They need to get your letters of recommendation sent to those schools. That's a big enough task when it comes to that they can't take time to do all of the prep stuff necessary. So the self-advocacy is an absolute component of this. And I will tell you, of the counselors that we employ and of the counselors I've interviewed, they all would like to do it right. But there is no possibility of being able to do it right. They have said that. That is not me. That is an infinite number of counselors, pretty much everyone I ever talked to. Right. So they're there with information, but you have to look at them like you look at Google, like you look at the library. You don't just get smart because you have a library in your town. You got to go into the library, take the book out, read the book, return the book, get another book. That's the operation. And if you don't enter something in Google, it doesn't just give you the information, right? Same thing in the counselor. They have a lot of information. They have access, but you have to use that access to your advantage.
Yeah. To kind of bring another thing back to the roles of parents, I think the other thing you have to be able to do is manage expectations.
Ooh,
right?
big time.
Whose
expectations?
Well, whether it's the parent, we essentially what ends up happening is we have to manage the parents' expectations, and the parents have to end up managing. That's where some counselors. But you have to realize you're not going to get into all schools.
Yep.
Right. And way too often when you talk about stress, it's, students end up feeling I didn't get into this school. I'm irrelevant. I'm not good enough. No, that's not it. You have to understand that you're not going to get in everywhere. You're not going to get a full ride everywhere. You have to know what's coming so that you can manage some of the things. Parents, talk to your kids about your story. Talk to them about how many schools you applied to. How many schools did you get accepted to? What was your job path?
What were your options? Did your parents say this is the only school you can go to? Was it a different ballgame? But I think the more important piece to that, Joe, that I don't think everybody understands because it's really at the higher ed level. And if you're approaching it, you haven't been there, so you don't really understand this. Especially in the post-COVID, post-SAT, like new algorithm world, you have humans on the other end of an application at some point reading and reviewing your stuff. Let me ask you, how many times in a 3-month window could you read and review the same type of information from a multitude of people and give really objective and, open, unbiased reviews? At some point, you're tired. You've got 5 more spots to fill. They're not going to go to the person that probably deserves it. They're going to go to the person that was the one on their desk when they're like, I just need to approve. I need to accept somebody. And post-COVID, I have seen absolute craziness in who got in where and then didn't get in somewhere. And they got into this crazy school that I thought they would never get into, but didn't get into a school that was a complete shoe-in target school, and vice versa, right? They got into the target, they didn't get into any of the reach. They didn't even get into one of their safeties. And you're going, well, this thing is moving around. So, it's not a reflection of the student. It's not, in some cases it is, but in general, you can't wear that badge because you don't know. And you'll never know why. You don't get that feedback. And they're like, well, we didn't accept you because you were up against a kid whose parents could afford to write a check for $75,000. And we just decided, hey, your student's smarter, but they can write more money. And so we're going to accept that kid.
A good example last night was, I did an exercise and I said, okay, you don't get in, but the kid that's last name is Kennedy and the library is named Kennedy. And there's a reason that those 2 names are the same. That person gets in. Yeah, those things exist. 100%. Hey, you can't always compare yourself to other students. You don't know you don't know if their legacy, you don't know if that plays a role. There's so many things that go into it. It's not always, hey, my son's a higher class rank than them. Why did they get in and I didn't?
Well, maybe their application was looked at first and they decided they were only going to take 1 student from that high school.
Yeah.
Oh, they just happened to choose the wrong student too early and they can't undo the admission.
Maybe that student did early decision.
Yep.
And now they potentially now are overpaying. They're paying twice as much, even though they got into the same school. Okay, was that something you wanted to do? You don't know all the details and all of the the minute things that are behind the scene. So don't take it with a grain of salt, but be prepared to be rejected. It's going to happen. Ask parents. Have you compare it to the kids when again you manage? Did you get every job that you ever applied for? I'm sure you applied for jobs that you didn't get. Did it destroy you? No, you moved on. You've end up, you're at a job that's happy, where you're phenomenal. It's a great fit. Again, tell that story. Make sure that they know that it's not the end of the world should they not get in. And again, when we talk about potential career paths, guys, use your own stories. Mom and dad, talk to your kids about how you got to where you are. I thought that was a great piece last night when, kids, I think, they think their parents hey, dad, you must have went to school to become a college financial expert, right? And you took all finance classes and you did that and you graduated college and you had the job that you did the day you came out and you've been doing it ever since. And it's been exactly, not even remotely close, right? I bounced all over.
I started in decorative metalwork.
But But that's a story to explain to your kids that it might not be as linear. Let them know that, yeah, there are choices out there. It might not be exactly how you planned it out. But the more that you just have these conversations and discuss them, the better prepared, the more likely, again, you manage those expectations, hopefully lower stress. I don't think it's possible to do that.
No.
But yeah. And the one other thing that I think was the really big takeaway last night that I did want to hit on today was deadlines, because it was made clear. I guess I haven't lived with this one yet because my kids are still younger. But it was portrayed that if a teacher in high school might have a deadline of, hey, that essay's due by Friday, pretty much known that everybody has till Monday to hand that essay in, and great man that gave this presentation last night said, I would love to see somebody try and get their early action application in on November 2nd when the deadline was November 1st.
Nope.
The answer is no. In college, those deadlines are not recommendations. They're requirements.
Yep.
And I don't know if every student, I think that's something that the students have to, that is not something mom and dad, that's part of driving the bus. That's part of being prepared, the self-advocacy of knowing I have to get, and it's not just an application. It's the transcripts, the essays, the letters of recommendation. You have to have everything in by those dates. But again, you got to prepare. You got to have that list of long before senior year. When am I applying? What are all the deadlines? What schools am I going to be going to? When do I have, what do they need? What do I have to get to them by what date? Like, you can't do that starting the summer before senior year. Like, there's a lot of work that has to go in before that. So again, I wish I could tell you the best time to start planning, but it ultimately bring this full circle. Earlier is better.
Yeah, no question about it. And, I was talking to my dad a long time ago about some of his keys to success in life. And, he said, Dave, sometimes you have to realize that certain jobs require A-level work, certain jobs require B-level work, and certain jobs you can get away with C-level work. And I never really thought about it in terms of, what is that? What does it mean? And so I think this is a perfect way to look at this. If you start college planning freshman year, it's not A-level work. It's C-level work. Mm-hmm. It's open conversations. It's exploring. It's the whimsical side of it, right? But if you start junior year, you better be bringing A game from start to finish if you want to have a successful outcome.
Yeah.
So the point that I make is you can ease into this thing. You can take remedial college planning, then move up to, honors college planning, then advanced college planning, then, the AP level of work associated with it. You can mature into it at the same time. You made mention of something else. And I wanted to reflect back on it. I can't remember the last piece. What was the last point you brought up there?
About deadlines?
Oh, deadlines. Yes, deadlines. So just as an example, we help thousands of families every year, not only do the application process, do the financial plans associated with it, fill out the financial aid forms with them and for them. And we tell people our platform, right? We have a very, very sophisticated technology platform that we run families in, and it has all of the deadlines, and we buy the information to make sure the deadlines are tight and right. Even though we do all of that, we still tell the families every single time, research the deadline at every institution you're going to apply to, write it down. We give them a tracker so that it is on like a bulletin board, not hidden away in a file system, but on a bulletin board. Know the deadlines, because you can't start on November or October 31st to submit November 1. You can't do it. You've got to give yourself time and weeks, because, we rush, we make errors. Yeah. And I will tell you, grammatical errors on essays, errors in the spelling on an application, those things stick out. And that is enough for someone to say, nope, not doing it. They didn't take the time, right? They didn't care enough to submit their best work to us. So And I think that's another point that everybody should realize is, I made mention of the counselor being tired and having admission fatigue in accepting and rejecting, and being at the bottom of the pile. But you don't know what makes somebody make that decision.
Mm-hmm.
So if you get someone who's very hard on grammar and punctuation and they want to, they're very analytical and they want to see that everything lines up and everything, that could be enough for them to say no. Right. Yeah. So again, put your best work forward as you go to the application itself.
Yeah. Last thing I think I would want to comment on is what I saw last night. I thought was great. Not all of them are.
Yeah.
As parents, guys, it's more than just some research on the internet, right? It's hard to go somewhere to get all the answers and make sure that those answers are correct, right? I went to this because it's my school district. My oldest is in 4th grade. I said, hey, I have the evening off. This is open. I would like to educate myself, right? It was a great use of an hour of my time to be able to talk about it today. It could have been awful and we would have talked about it today. Right? 100%. But I guess what? I want to go to more of these. I want to see what is it the same thing that good presenters are saying, that it's the same thing that we say day in and day out, or it might not be, the best. And so if you don't know what somebody's saying is right or wrong, you have to do some research. You have to go to other presentations. You guys have to invest some time to find out what is real in this world and what is not. Okay. Yep. But that was, again, went to this thing. I saw it pop up. I said, hey, you know what? I think I might want to go to this, and went to it. And I'm really glad that I did, because I think the biggest piece was, I don't know if parents understood how valuable, like, this is my profession. This is what I do for a living. And I said, everything he said was 100% spot on.
Yep.
That was a great takeaway. So, it made me feel good about my school district, number one.
Yeah.
Like that's what they were offering. But I'll be honest, when I went in there, I was thinking that I was going to have my hand raised in the middle of that presentation saying, what about this? What about that? And luckily I was not. So there are some really good people out there that can help, but there's also people out there that might not be. And unfortunately, there's no
hack job.
There's no way to know, what did you just hear? Is that true or not?
And that's where you go back to the distillation comment.
Yeah.
Like, so, and Joe, I want to piggyback on something, which is a little feed into what we do. If you went to this presentation, right, and you were like, oh, great information, love it, I'm set, right?
No.
Why?
Well, because it was the baseline. It was the foundation. Now I got to apply that to my kids. If my kid was a sophomore, I got to take that. Okay, I know who's responsible for what. I got to help my child create a roadmap. I now know what has to be done, right? Mm-hmm. But I have to apply it to what now specifically for me. And just knowing it doesn't help if you don't actually apply what you've learned.
Let me bait you a little more.
Okay.
So you present.
Oh, yeah.
And you've had countless people come up to you and say, this was the best presentation I've ever seen. What's missing from that presentation that your presentation hits?
It's the financial side.
Right?
Yeah.
So, and not that we don't get into academics and all that stuff, but there's a whole other world to this thing.
Yeah.
That is the finance of college, that is the paying for it, that is the understanding the financial aid formulas, the CSS profile and all that stuff. And if you go to admissions, the best admissions presentation that there is, right? And you stop, it's half the battle.
Right. And they did get into credit them. They talked about that you need to have conversation with your kids about money, right? Talk to your kids about inflation right now. Do they even know what that means? Probably not. Like, have those conversations. But he's like, part of the reason that the student debt crisis is where it's at is because parents are not having the conversation about money, and in the school that you find it's does fit financially. The piece that always gets missed is that a school that's a financial fit does not mean sticker price. Yeah. That is ultimately where my presentation about the financing of college and how to save and not overpay is those two worlds have to combine.
Yep.
Now, if I were to piggyback onto that presentation, it would have been a 2-hour presentation because it's each one of those needs at least an hour of time to truly
get to the baseline.
Just the baseline, not even how you apply it to your, but just the general knowledge that every family needs to know when they're planning. It is, I mean, you could get so deep into this, but he talked about, you got to know the right price. You got to know how that system works. You have to, now they didn't get into it, but I'm glad that they did mention it.
Mm-hmm.
You know, you have to apply everything that he said. And then the financial world would obviously, that's what makes our company very different in that it's not just one or the other. It is the merger of those two.
Yep.
You know, and that's where it was, again, I'll say a little gratifying last night and I'm hearing, I'm like, I know the answer to that question. Oh, I know what he's going to say next. Oh, I heard a question from the audience. How would I answer it? Oh, it was the same exact way that he answered. I'm like, all right, you know, it was a little great. You know, hey, Dave, you're not just giving me the Kool-Aid and I'm drinking it blindly. Like it was, you know, doing a little bit of research on my own.
Little do you know.
But listen, it was good to know that. I think part of me, when I got into this industry, I felt that there is nobody out there that teaches the right thing.
Yep.
It was good to know that there are. I still know there's probably more that teach the wrong things than the right things, but it was good to hear someone give really good advice. I don't know if the parents took it as how valuable it truly was, which it could be a shame. But that's what we do on the financial side is the same thing.
Well, I think a lot of times there's that, oh, I knew that. Oh yeah, I got that. That makes sense. You know, and they're just kind of grumbling and check. I did it. One of the points I want to circle back to in talking about presentations and the bane of my existence is financial aid nights at high schools. And you know, I could say it less strong, but they're terrible. I have not been to one. I don't know how many I've listened to. I've read the slide decks. I've listened to the presentations. I've got the recordings. I've been in person. I've been live. And, you know, basically the financial aid night is just fill out the FAFSA and you know, it'll be all good. And so what parents are kind of trained or, you know, what they're given is this is just the process that you go through. But they don't teach the why or the how the money is calculated, how it's done. And so you have a lot of parents that get to the knowledge of what they have to do, but not why or what it's based on and how it works. And the outcome of that is, you know, it's you're going into it blind. You don't know what you should be paying. You don't know what the reality of affording it is. And you go to a financial aid night and you check the box, right? But you didn't get any information that was distilled down to, well, why does this matter to me? Other than I just have to do this, and you deal with the result of that. And I mean, Joe, how many people have come into us well after we were able to help them and say, well, we didn't get anything. And I go, well, I could tell you why you didn't get anything. You basically told him you got $1 million because that's what you're sitting on. Spend it. That's what they're going to say. No, and it's not to get into the moving and sheltering and placement and all that, but like we're not talking about $25,000. We're talking about $100,000 to $350,000 per child.
Yeah,
you know, I got 4 kids, Joe. You got 3. That's an awful lot of money. You know, 1.2 to 1.6 million on my side. 900,000 to 1.2 on your side, depending on what the inflationary cost of college continues to be. Yeah. This is the first time in the last 20 years that inflation has outpaced the inflation in college.
For now.
Yeah. Right. But I mean, college has been 5 to 7% increases every single year. And even those schools that freeze tuition, everything else goes up. The utilities, the rent, the fees, the room and board, all that, right?
Books.
So
it all goes up.
Again, our public service announcement in this whole episode, and we hope you guys learned a bunch out of this because, you know, one of the things we pride ourselves on is continuing to learn, right? Lifetime learning, continue to stay in the game. But these are things you need to know, talk about, and deal with. And you can't just let college come at you anymore. It can't, it just is, it's too expensive. It's too pivotal and critical for the student. And, with the graduation rate on average being 5.8 years in this country, man, you don't want to get it's the same way I talk about a good financial plan, right? A good financial plan is never known until 25 years after it's been created. Man, it would really stink to get there and realize you had a bad plan. College is the same way, right? If you build a plan to get in and pay for a 4-year and it's a bad plan and it's a bad school, you'd really hate to figure that out at the 5.8 year mark when you've invested, arguably 75% more than you needed to in a college education.
Yeah.
So, all right. Thanks everybody. This has been College Knowledge. We'll talk to you next week.
Thanks for listening to the College Knowledge Podcast with your hosts, Dave Kozak and Joe Kerins. We hope you enjoyed this week's exploration of higher education sponsored by the College Planning Network and Paradigm Financial Group. To suggest a topic or recommend a guest, please visit collegeknowledge.net. If you like the content, please subscribe on your preferred podcast listening app. Share or post about it on social media. That's all for this episode. See you next time.